Good morning, everybody. Welcome. So today, what we're going to talk about is career significance. And what I really want to do is get you into your child. Most of the tables have crayons on them, just a couple. We're going to have a little exercise later about that. But what I want to do is just kind of nurture you through how you got to where you are. Quick little story. There we go. I never ever thought I'd be in sales. And I am a Sandler trainer out of Kansas City. So this is, there's been a lot of surprises in my life. I graduated with a computer science degree. I thought I wanted to do that, realized I didn't. Then I got into sales, didn't plan to do that, and now I've been coaching and training salespeople for 20 years. And the reason this topic's important to me is because when I look back on my life, this was really what I was meant to do. And what I would like you guys to think about is what you're currently doing, is it what you were meant to do? I've found that most salespeople didn't plan to be here. When I asked statistically about maybe 10 to 15% when they were 18 years old, they said, yeah, I knew I was going to be in sales as a profession. And the rest of us, it was kind of a surprise. So if you felt like you didn't get the memo on that, most of us didn't. And so what I want to do is not only talk about having success in sales, but how can you have more of an impact? And that's really the difference between significance and success. And I'm going to take you through, that would help. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 4 S's today of the intentional life. Who's ever heard of the 4 S's before? Anybody? A few of you? Awesome. Then we're going to define the difference between success and significance. One of my favorite leadership coaches is Darren Hardy. Who's ever heard of Darren Hardy before? All right, I really like his podcast. He does one every day. It's only like a little 4-minute thing. It's part of my daily routine. And he went ahead and did a nice description of that. And then we're also going to do the crayon exercise. All right, so here's the 4 S's. Now, it may not be the 4 S's you were thinking about, but who has a teenager in their home? Anybody? Okay, now maybe it's just my kids, but they can be kind of selfish sometimes. Fair? And if you don't have a teenager, you've been one, right? So what's interesting about when we focus on success more than significance is that if you really unpack it a little bit, it's still kind of about being selfish. You know, I want a bigger house. I want a bigger car. I want all these things. It's still kind of I. And even when people will say something like, I want my kids to have things I didn't have. Sometimes if you unpack that a little bit, it's still about the parent. It's really, it's really about them wanting to be more successful. These age frames are just, don't take them too literal, but when people start to get in their late 30s, maybe up until middle 50s, their careers start to kind of merge into something. Like you might have had a few roles and you're like, I don't know what that was all about. I was there for 2 years. Or maybe you did something, worked at some company and that didn't quite work out. And then all of a sudden when you start to get into your late 30s, early 40s, you start to see how this is becoming part of your story. Now, one of the things that Tim Roberts talked about yesterday is that ambition and drive is important if you're going to be in professional sales and as a sales leader. And what he was saying is, there's ambition and drive, that's your internal passion, but there's also something about feeling like you're called to a position. And this could be just something that you really feel like you were meant to do this. And what I find is that if you go back to your childhood and what you wanted to be, like in first, second, third grade, for some reason they stop in 4th grade, where you don't draw anymore what you want to be when you're an adult. There's usually something there, and that's what we're going to do a little bit later. But as the success, I think a lot of people sometimes get the promotion, they get the house, they get the cars, and then they realize, this is making me happy for a while, but it's really not floating my boat. And it's when you get into that significance that you start to look at what kind of impact am I having? Krishna talked about it yesterday, your purpose. I like to use the word impact because that's really what comes out of your purpose, is that you're actually having impact on people. Obviously if you have a family or if you have a significant other, there's purpose in that. But we spend quite a bit of time at work, 40 hours, 50 hours a week. And so if we can start to tie that to our work life, we can start to touch more lives. The last one is surrender. And again, someone could be in this not necessarily at these ages, but that's when you really start to focus down on what's important to you. It's almost like, like if you've ever been to a vineyard before, the vines really don't look very attractive because they just cut off anything that isn't going to produce fruit. And the more they cut off, the bigger the grapes are. If you see a beautiful grapevine, it's probably not producing much fruit because it's got a lot of leaves that aren't producing. But this is where people really start to kind of double down on things in their life. Less is more type of thing. So I'm just curious, I'm not going to ask anybody if they're in the selfish part, but is anybody feeling like you're already in the surrender part? You're starting to do surrender things? Yeah, I'm not surprised. Who's starting to feel that significance? Obviously you make a good living, but it's about the money, but it's not about the money. And then who you say, yeah, I'm definitely in the success part. I'm climbing the ladder. And there's nothing wrong with any one of these. I just found that sometimes you can be successful and not necessarily significant. But if you're significant, you're always successful. So it's just something to strive for. All right, so here's how Darren Hardy, I've actually written a couple books about this. As I start to coach, when I started coaching salespeople about 20 years ago, one of the common things and sales leaders is like, I'm not even sure how I got here. I got an MBA and somehow I'm in sales, or they were like me. And so that's when I started to see that this was happening. And Darren Hardy is the gentleman I mentioned earlier. He said, success is to achieve the status, the trophy, the notable degree, the big position, the impressive title, the bigger house, the envelope. It's like the holiday letters you get, right? A lot of this is kind of like this, where you went on vacation, all that kind of stuff. Again, nothing wrong with this. But significance is to know that our lives meant something, that we've had a positive impact on the lives of others. And only significance provides that. So again, you can have both, but it's really about, what kind of impact am I having? And instead of just seeing it as a job, I'm going to work every day. And I think being in customer facing, whether it's sales, client success, sales leaders, is one of the best positions there is. Because a lot of times, no one can really just kind of pat you on the head and tell you what you're worth. And so if we can start to really tie it to having more impact, personally, I've experienced that it's helped me get more meaning out of my career. All right, so there should be a crayon or two at each table. I think I kind of ran out over there, sorry, but what I'd like you to do is somebody at least grab the two that are there, and then I'm gonna have you pass them around here in a second. But the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take the crayon and I want you to put it up to your nose and close your eyes and take a big old whiff. And then once you're done, pass it to somebody else. Don't stick it in your nose. Just smell that crayon. Doesn't that take you back to your childhood? So there's not enough crayons for everybody to do this, but if you have a pen, and if you don't, what I want you to do is I want you to draw what you wanted to be when you were like in second or third grade. Could be the President of the United States. Could be an astronaut. Could be a teacher. Could be a professional athlete. Okay? And just take a moment. This isn't a art contest, so stick men, stick women, it all works. But just start to draw and if you don't have anything to write on, just go back to that time. It's interesting, some people can just go back there so quickly, and others, they really have to think. I know personally, I'll kind of buy some time here while you're doing it. I'm sure, my dad was a farmer, so I'm sure in first grade that's what I drew. But then it sort of evolved. And one of the things I'm pretty sure I drew in third grade was, and I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but when I was in second or third grade, the Jackson 5 and the Osmond brothers were all that. They were out there, they were on TV, and I thought that would be so fun to be one of those guys, They did the moves and had all the attention. I thought that would have been awesome, but God didn't give me a very good voice, so that got knocked down. But that's part of my story. Okay, now share with a neighbor what you're drawing, and some of you are going to have to describe it because it may not be apparent, or just tell them, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Go ahead and just take a few minutes, and then I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. All right, let's wrap it up in about 10 seconds or quicker. Okay, someone yell out what you want to be. Just yell. Okay, what was that, doctor? Ballerina. Okay, anybody else pick a ballerina? Okay, so now what was it about a ballerina that was interesting to you? They're so beautiful. And then what else about the whole experience? Performance, putting on a show. Okay. So now what I'd like you to do is, what in your current role allows you to do some of that? And I know you guys can't see her, but she is very beautiful. But what is it in your current role that allows you to do that? Being in front of people, maybe there's some type of performing going on. Someone else yell out something. Teacher, okay. And what role do you have now? Sandler ambassador, okay. And what about being a teacher is tied to what you're doing now?
Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a facilitator. I love sharing knowledge and information.
Isn't that interesting? Let's do at least one more. Someone else yell out something. What was it? Fireman. Okay, who else wanted to be a fireman? Anybody else? Okay, what is it about the fireman that was intriguing to you? Outside, rescuing people. And what role are you in now? President. There you go. Now, our last one, we got to be careful about the rescuing, right, Chris? Where'd you go? We don't want to rescue too quick, especially in sales. But the point there is, if you can kind of tie that to what you're doing, and part of what I get the pleasure of doing is, well, first of all, I'm speaking today. I'm on a stage. There's a tie to the Osmond brother thing, right? And then, but the other part of it is just the impact that you can have. I'm usually not on a stage, but I train probably 5 times a week, and it's the thing that brings me the most joy. Would I have ever come up with this? Not in a million years when I was a kid. But so what I was just kind of urging you guys is to, kind of lean into that a little bit and really start to see how the impact you can have. I'm sure there's someone in the room that was promoted to a sales leader position because you were the best salesperson. Did that happen to anybody? Okay. Sometimes that works, and sometimes that doesn't work, but mainly it's because you want to get promoted, right? I want to have more success. But I think some of you have probably discovered this. Now, maybe it worked. I'm sure it worked for some of you, but you can actually have more impact if you're a great salesperson. When you think about the lives you're impacting and the people, they're both great, but sometimes the promotion isn't as good as the type of work you're doing. All right, here's another thing that can happen. It's a kind of an interesting story. I have an older sister and then myself, and my dad really urged us to be teachers. Like when we were kids, and both of us said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, I don't want to. He goes, well, you could get summers off. I said, yeah, but you don't make enough. My sister and I are both money motivated. And so, but anyway, fast forward, And my sister ended up becoming a nurse. And then she ended up getting her doctorate in nursing. And she has been teaching nursing students for the last 15, 20 years. But she kind of started out as a nurse and then became the teacher. But my dad saw something in her and me that we didn't see in ourselves. Fast forward with me, I'm a trainer. I don't like to call myself a teacher because that seems like you're little kids. But let's face it, there's an element of that there, right? So what are things that people say you would be really good at, that 2 or more people have said you'd be really good at it? And maybe write that down. Could be a certain career. And then I want you to share that with a neighbor, and let's see if there's another little tie there of some sort. You ready to go? Okay, share it with a neighbor. What has someone said you'd be really good at? And a lot of times we go, no, it's no big deal. But if 2 or more have said it, I'd pay attention. So go ahead and talk about that. A little quieter. All right, let's come on back. So who is in a role that you've been told that you would be good at? Raise your hand. Just a few, okay. So what were the other roles? Just yell them out. Nanny. A what? Nanny. A nanny? Oh, and what are you doing now? That's interesting. I wonder how you could tie that, though. You had more than one person say that. That's awesome. Anybody else? Artist. Okay. So how could you tie that into what you're doing now? You're very creative, evidently. Okay. Last thing, if you're considering something, Sandler has a lot of third-party assessments, and what you may or may not know, though, is that you can do some what-ifs with some of them. And like, for example, if you're in sales right now and you've been thinking about becoming a sales leader, and you've already taken the assessment, then they can run you as a sales leader, or maybe you're a customer inside salesperson and you want to be an outside salesperson. I think we had a promotion over here. There's things like that that can help you with that. But the last thing is what's one thing that you can do over the next 90 days to attempt to get more out of what you are right now? Just think about, maybe write down, what could you do? Like maybe you need to call somebody. Maybe you need to ask your boss about something. Maybe you need to just kind of double down on some of your behaviors, But something that you can really tie your significance to what you're doing, not just success, the impact you're going to have. Last thing, I got a little humor here. So, there's more to the story, okay? So imagine you're the mom and your little girl brings this home. She's like, what? So then she goes, well, I can't just let this go. So she called the teacher up and she said, yeah, so that picture that looks like I'm on a stage with a stripper pole and people are giving me money? That's not quite what happened. And the teacher's like, it's okay. No, it's not okay. She said, I was telling my daughter the day before that, I work at Home Depot and we had sold a ton of shovels. And so that was me holding a shovel and people paying me money. I'm sure the teacher goes, whatever. Anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks for being here.